If you're working on this at home and you do not have a standard 12-inch ruler, you can use the 6-inch ruler that you received in your art kit. What I'm doing right now is I'm dividing the height of this paper in half. I know that the height in this orientation is 12 inches, so I'm just making a mark at the end of the ruler at 6 on both the right and the left sides. Now, the width of the paper is 15 inches wide. So half of 15 is 7.5. My ruler is only 6 inches. So here I marked at 6, and then I'm adding on an additional 1.5 inches. So that gives me there the exact center at 7.5 inches wide. I'm going to be doing the same thing at the top of the paper. Again, measuring from the left side to the end of the ruler is 6 inches, making a tiny little light mark, and then adding another 1.5 inches. Now, since the ruler it's obviously not long enough to reach the whole way across, from here, I'm just going to be using my poster paper that I use for the ribbon words and using that as my straight edge. Again, do this very, very lightly. This is your grid. It's meant to be temporary. It's not meant to stay on your drawing permanently. Eventually, we're going to erase it. So if you press too dark, the lines will be hard to erase. So see there, you can barely see it. I'm using my number 2 pencil. And also, as you're working, you want to have your grid in front of you. If you don't want to print it out, if you're not able to print it out, just look off of your computer screen. Now, with this sample, I've only divided this into 4 equal sections. You could divide it further, as my sample image on my computer had. You would just need to divide the 4 squares that you have in half again. So just doing some simple math to divide that out. So at this point, again, I'm using my lightest pencil. So if you have a number 2 pencil, please use that. Notice how I'm gripping the pencil. I'm holding it further away. That will prevent me from pressing too hard. And I'm just putting down some preliminary marks, little dots, and almost you can think of this like connect the dots. So I'm looking at the letters that I have, and specifically I'm starting right in the middle, which I think is a good strategy. That way you're sizing everything more accurately. And from here you can see I have now connected the dots, and just I'm fine-tuning the edges and the shapes. Again, continue drawing lightly. Keep checking for accuracy. Keep measuring angles. So looking at for instance, the inner upper corner of the letter P. I want to make sure I get that angle accurately drawn and kind of tidy things up as you go using your eraser. I would be using your pink eraser, the square eraser that you have, rather than what I'm doing. I have barely any eraser left on that pencil, but I'm making do with it. At this point, I'm not using a ruler. I will be going back and straightening out lines and making them more level and crisp, but this is just kind of roughing things in and getting placeholders put out. At this point, I am going to move on to the letter E. So I'm starting at the outer edge. I want to see where that E is cropped off of the right side of the paper. And I'm just kind of evaluating, dividing up that bottom right quadrant into smaller sections. So those little light lines that I'm marking there, since I didn't make a grid over top. And that way I have another reference point. So the idea here is I need to keep comparing the spacing along the edges of the paper, the grid line, and also comparing the amount of space that should exist between the last letter I did, the P, and the E that I'm placing in here. Another helpful tip is to not only focus on the positive space, so when you're drawing this word, the positive space would be your 2-inch paper strips, the letters. But what about the space in between, the negative space, right? So also focus on that, the negative space in between each of the letters, those gaps, and also the space in between closed shapes. At this stage, just going to be going back and refining your lines, cleaning them up. So I'm using my eraser, I'm using my ruler to straighten the edges out. I do want to make sure that, again, I'm not drawing too dark, but for this particular video for you guys to see, I am drawing a little bit darker than I normally would. And you don't want this to look sketchy. You shouldn't have fuzzy lines. You do want one clean, light line for this stage in the work. And then obviously as you're erasing all the stray marks and cleaning things up, also erase your grid lines and any other additional marks that you had drawn on your paper to help with your accuracy.